Greetings once again to the wonderful DMIN students in PMIN897 or 897 experience. I'm actually coming by with something extra based on the grading I have been doing of your excellent work in the summary of the literature section of the proposal. I have discovered that quite often I refer you to, something like, okay, this would be great material in an introductory section of the proposal, or this would be great in a later section that addresses your ministry project more specifically, etc. And it occurs to me that it might be helpful just to take some time, kind of jump ahead. I don't usually do this until the week 9 Zoom meeting, but I wanted to pull out some of those slides and just address the structure of the proposal as a whole so you can see more specifically what I'm talking about. It's also been very helpful in the fact that I am preparing to teach PMIN 700 with Dr. Flynn. Had a great conversation with him yesterday, in fact, about its relationship to 897, and clarified that what he's doing in that class, obviously, as you know, is giving you a general orientation to the Doctor of Ministry program, as well as a more general orientation to the dissertation, and finally to the proposal. And so what is called a literature review in 700 is not a literature review specifically. It can be, but it really is intended to have other elements involved as well. So it's really in 897 that we're composing the proposal. And so the literature for us, the summary of the literature, what will be chapter 2, the survey of the literature, is very, very specifically focused and is not involving other elements, whether by way of background or project design or whatever it might be. So I thought it might be good to just take some time to send you something extra. And in our week 9 Zoom meeting, I will specifically still come back and unpack the use of the template specifically to make sure that you're ready to do that. So let's jump in. In terms of the sections of the proposal, there are 12 sections. We're working on the main 2, obviously. We're working on the summary of the literature and then the BTH foundations. There are 4 introductory sections, and then there are the 2 big ones that are simply the research of all background information, background research, but in 2 different kinds of sections, as you know. And then there are an additional 6 concluding sections. And so the introductory sections and the concluding sections are really fairly short. So the lit summary of the BTH foundations is longer, but you remember the proposal, it's not unusual for the proposal to be usually around 30 pages long. And so if the summary of the literature is 10 pages, the BTH foundations is 10 pages, that leads another 10 pages for the other 10 sections. And so these are fairly short, but very, very important. Remember, you are composing a proposal which will end up being chapter 1 introduction. And so it's just designed to introduce some of the big ideas that you will unpack more extensively in the other chapters of your dissertation. So there are questions about, of course, research reports. You remember, we're working on these 2 big sections. Summary of the literature will ultimately be unpacked, expanded, broadened out to be chapter 2. And so usually, rule of thumb, the summary is 10 to 12 pages. It will end up, of course, then being in chapter 1, 10 to 12 pages. No matter what your proposal looks like, it will come back around to that eventually, because that is the introduction. The BTH foundations, another 10 to 12 pages. And of course, we've been spending some good time discussing the difference between those 2. I love both of the sections, but they function in very, very different ways. And so the lit summary actually lays the scholarly foundation for your project. And then the BTH Foundations section unpacks those 3. And when you think about it, the biblical, theological, and historical areas are 3 different disciplines that you would have in your MDiv program that you would have been focused on. and to some degree involve 3 different skill sets. And so even your chapter 3 can't be huge. Just like the summary of the literature will be a minimum of 30 pages, upwards, maybe even toward 50 in some cases. But still, as even when it comes to chapter 3 and chapter 2, your ability to accurately summarize and paraphrase will demonstrate comprehension. So you can really go to town and start writing. Some of you could just write and have a major tome, which will be fine. You can expand your dissertation later into 1 or more books or journal articles or whatever you want to do. It's commonly done. And so those are the big sections in our proposal. Then we have some introductory sections that are very, very important. Now, these are, think of them as maybe 2 paragraphs, and some of the shorter ones, maybe 3, maybe 4, a page and a half. In other words, they're not long. And so the first section is the overview. That's the heading of it. The overview is just a general introduction to your ministry project. And so that's going to kind of frame in. That's hugely important to be able to start out right, casting vision for what it is that you want to do in your project. And then there is the statement of the problem section. That's the section where you will very specifically state your statement of the problem. And it needs to be stated there. It doesn't need to be stated elsewhere. It could be restated in one of the later sections. But this is where it comes in very specifically, and you're going to amplify it in terms of surrounding issues, etc. This is where in these early sections, you're casting vision for your project. And then the third one is a section called the rationale for doing the ministry project, and it's very specific. That's when we want you to explain to us why it is that you've chosen your particular ministry project. So you're going to explain the significance of the study, and you're asked to answer 4 questions specifically. Number 1, why are you interested in this topic? Number 2, why there is a need to address the problem. Number 3, who would benefit from your research? And specifically, of course, you're going to address a little bit more the location, your research context. And number 4, what gap in the research are you addressing? Where is the specific focus in the research? And the whole idea of a gap in the research means that there's a question, there's a research question, there's an issue, a problem in the research that you've encountered that you want to address specifically. You will be providing unique, distinctive research in your area. When you're done publishing your dissertation, you will be considered an expert in that specific area. And so we're looking for some of these introductory ideas, and that can be a little bit longer, as can the next one. Limitations and assumptions are there to clarify the scope of your research and the boundaries. So we want to know, okay, how do you draw boundaries around this issue that you have discovered, this problem that you want to address? And you're also admitting that there are some things you're not going to attempt to do because it goes beyond really the specific focus of your research. And although others could do it later, you might do it later. And so the section called limitations and assumptions is very, very important. It's also, this is kind of a standard requirement in the DMIN handbook. You will also make a statement, and I think it's okay to just quote it, that your subject is going to be from an evangelical perspective and in consonance with the statements of faith as they appear in the Regent School of Divinity. So it's one of those, one of those sentences that's important, is meaningful, and we're looking for it to be in this specific section of your proposal. And then there will be some very, very important concluding sections. So kind of think in terms of you're doing all the introductory work in your proposal, then you're doing the big background research sections, and then you're going to do some things by way of conclusion. And so after your BTH Foundation section, you will have the section called Methods for Analyzing the Problem. And so after describing your various considerations, possibilities for research, You're going to do some preliminary, really anticipation of what you want to do research-wise. Now, granted, you don't know, honestly, you don't know specifically what your project design will be until you have processed your HSR application. We'll deal with that subject in some detail later in the semester. So you're anticipating, this is what you would like to see, hope to see. And so it has to do with elements of the research that you would like to do, maybe, some questionnaires, maybe describing some of the tools that you will be using, etc. And you will make some statements about research methodology. And that's all about quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods, and why you anticipate what you're going to do, the way you are going to do it is the best thing, or going to be the best thing for your ministry project. This is huge, but again, it's an anticipatory, it's a concluding section. The next section is called Results and Contributions. By the way, methods for analyzing a problem will end up being your chapter 4. Results and contributions will end up being your chapter 5. And this is really is anticipatory because you don't know what they will be. But at this point in time, you can speculate as to what you think they may be, or you can speculate as to the results you're hoping for. And I think it's okay to state it in that way. And again, you're casting vision, of course, for Dr. Flynn at the end of our process, but then for your chair as well. So you will relate your expectations about results and outcomes, including benefits and contributions to your specific context. So once again, you're going to go back, and some of you have done this in the work that you did for 700 in your initial document that you sent in for your lit summary. You're going to make some specific statements about how you want your project to impact your specific research context, your local church or whatever the case may be. And then there's another kind of a related section called the evaluation of the project, your hope for, criteria for evaluating data. Your project is data collection, data analysis. Those are the two aspects of what you're going to do. And then chapter 5, you're reporting findings. And so you're going to do a little bit of that, what you anticipate maybe your analysis may look like. Again, you can't predict findings until you have data to analyze, but it's okay to spend a little bit of time anticipating how you're going to analyze the use of the various areas, tools that you will implement when it comes to your project and so forth. And then the very last section is summary, which summarizes the entire proposal. So not just those later sections, but you kind of bring it all to an end. You got to summarize what you've been doing in the sections of the proposal. You're going to tie a bow on it in the end, and it's going to be great. Then your working outline and the timeline. Now, please, nobody's going to hold your feet to the fire when it comes to this. This is just a sense of, you're telling Dr. Flynn and then your chair, do you have a reasonable expectation of how this is going to work in terms of process and schedule, etc. So it's an anticipated timeline of your dissertation phase, and it provides a sense of whether you have a realistic expectation. I remember once a student said, I plan on doing the whole thing, the dissertation, the project, the defense process in one semester. I said, well, unless you're a time traveler, I don't really know how you can do that. I can't even imagine how that could be done, because the defense phase itself is an additional, it's the last semester. And so please understand that the timeline will no doubt change. This is simply an indication of, okay, does this student really understand what's going to be involved? To be honest, most students take 3 semesters for this entire process. And that's working hard. I have to tell you, that is working hard. It's okay to take more. It's extremely rare. I myself have never experienced anyone doing it less. 3 semesters is pretty typical. And that's doable. Frankly, that's doable. And so this is all about the proposal as a whole. I just wanted to be able to stop by and give you a sense of it, so that when I say, by the way, I think this paragraph would work better in and an introductory section of the proposal, you'll know what I'm talking about. So God bless you, everybody. I'm just enjoying working with your stuff. Have a great weekend.